You are listening to Fresh Bread, Dr. Harry Reeder's daily devotional from the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals.
We're in the Gospel of Luke. We're in the 13th chapter where we just looked at the parable of the mustard seed, designed to tell us what the world dismisses as insignificant. You have no idea of where it's going to go because God is at work in it. Someone comes to Christ and they get excited about the gospel, and 7 students go to a haystack for prayer at the turn of the 19th century. Out of that comes the Second Great Awakening. 12 students go to prayer at Oxford College, and out of that comes the Great Awakening of the 18th century that brought the gospel of revival and gospel awakening to the world. Man, you never know what happens until Jesus gives another parable to reaffirm what he taught in the small mustard seed that grows into a tree, and the birds of the air, that is, the nations, are blessed through the spreading of that gospel throughout the world as we fulfill the Great Commission. Here's his second one. It's in Luke 13 and verse 20. And again he said to them, "To what shall I compare the kingdom of God? It is like leaven that a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour until it was all leavened." The kingdom of God, the spreading of the gospel, as we fulfill the Great Commission and live out the Great Commandment, it's like that little bit of leaven that's put into 3 measures of flour, and look at what it produces. All is leavened by it. You put that little bit of leaven, look at what happens to that lump of dough. It rises, it expands, it becomes tasty. All of those things begin to take place gloriously and powerfully. I love a wonderful moment when in my hometown, my grandfather was on a team that brought in a revivalist by the name of Mordecai Ham, who led 28 young men to Christ in Charlotte, North Carolina. You would know many of them, but one of them you'd know immediately. His name was Bill Franklin Graham. And this Billy Graham began to preach. But wait, where did Mordecai Ham come from? Well, Mordecai Ham was brought to Christ through the ministry of Billy Sunday. What a glorious ministry that he had. Well, Billy Sunday stands in the line of preachers like F.B. Meyer, who was led to Christ by D.L. Moody, who was led to Christ by a shoe salesman, and the shoe salesman that leads Dwight L. Moody to Christ, who led F.B. Meyer to Christ, who led Wilbur Chapman to Christ, who led Billy Sunday to Christ, who led Mordecai Ham to Christ, who led Billy Graham to Christ. Think of all that's happened through that. This Billy Graham came back to the place where that revival was working in Charlotte, and he preached there in his home church. And in that home church was my grandfather, who had been a part of bringing Mordecai Ham. And there he brought his son and his new wife, and his son, Harry Lloyd Reeder Jr., with his wife, went forward to give their life to Christ with a little baby in their arms in 1948 as Billy came to preach. And that little baby was me. And in 1958 he came back, and my dad recommitted his life to Christ and took me to the crusade, and I heard the gospel, and the work of calling me to Christ began in earnest. And then in 1998, here I am, saved and a pastor who is part of the team that brings Billy Graham back to Charlotte to preach again in 1998. And hundreds are coming to Christ. Don't you see how the Lord works? Just a little leaven that's put in, and watch how it expands and it enlarges as the kingdom of God irresistibly moves through the surpassing, unstoppable grace of God with the gospel of God, through the preeminence of Christ, who, when he is lifted up, will draw all men to himself. So go, and when you get to church this Lord's Day and worship the Lord, remember, little is much when God is in it. And remember this, everybody there has a story just like I told you. Something that everyone thought was insignificant, like a prayer meeting that's praying for God's work of grace. It's amazing what it will lead to. That's another slice of fresh bread.
As we celebrate our country's 250th birthday, Dr. Reeder examines God's influence in the lives of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. Our free gift to you is the series God's Providence and Our Country. Call 1-800-488-1888.